Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's time for Spirit and Mind. Welcome again as we discuss current affairs through a theological and mental health lens. Time of sharing. Please let someone know that we're on. Feel free to share. Feel free to let someone know. We so enjoy and appreciate the dialogue. And of course, I'm here with Dr. Shepherd. Dr. Shepherd, good afternoon. How are you today, sir?
Good afternoon, Bishop. I'm doing good. I am well. I'm thankful for another week and that God has kept me sustained. I'm thankful for all those who are out there who are listening to us, viewing us, whether it be live or through after you go back and watch through the pre-recorded process. And I guess, Bishop, we were on the same wavelength. We both got on yellow and white. So, we're more than just in link with our discussion, but even in attire today. So I'm looking forward to it. As I have mentioned to Bishop earlier, I am charged today. I have not even turned on my television within my home because I have just been up studying since 7 a.m. and studying to prepare for this broadcast and just other things, and just doing my best to provide and keep myself informed and provide knowledge to all those who want to hear and listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, everyone. Dr. Shepherd, that's the exact word he used, charged. And so, man, we are excited about what we have to share and committed and passionate about it. So please, thank you for your support, and please continue to share and engage with us. We appreciate the dialogue. We appreciate the emails. You can stay connected with us. You can stay connected with me at CGR Ministries on Facebook. at Bishop G. Robinson on Instagram, or at CGR Ministries on Instagram as well, Twitter, at Bishop CGR. I'd love to stay connected with you. I love the feedback, and I know Dr. Shepherd shares. I believe he does my sentiment, and would love for you to know some of his contact information.
Yeah, absolutely. You can look me up on Facebook. My professional page, Dr. Jonathan Shepherd, spelling is right there below. Please go there, like it. I'm sharing something literally every week, at least twice a week, some information. So go there. You can follow me on Instagram at Dr. J. Shep, and also on Twitter at Dr. J. Shep. So those are my professional pages. Would love for you to join in on the several discussions that I try to engage and to even educate people through.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, connection is key, and we are grateful for the blessing to be connected to each and every one of you. We look forward to the dialogue and the feedback. You are a part of Spirit in Mind. And so let me give a quick disclaimer. Like many of us, I've had to spend more time at home. I've been listening to the sage advice of medical professionals like Dr. Shepherd and others. And I've been adopting, to the best of my ability, the safer at home counsel. And so with that, when you spend more time at home, you find more stuff that needs to be done at home.
Yes.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
So there are repairs going on, and find stuff that needs to be fixed, and stuff that was leaking, and stuff that needs tweaking. Amen. And so we found it. Some of it we could do ourselves. Some of it were DIY projects, and others we had to call in help. And so I got some help here. So if you hear a little bit of noise, know that all is well. World War III hasn't broken out. Thanks be to God. But all is well. I tried to find the quietest place here in the house. I felt like the psalmist who said, "Where can I flee from your presence?" So if I go up into the heavens, you are there. And if I go down to Hades, you are there. And so that's my disclaimer, but it's also a segue today, because Psalms is one of my favorite books from the perspective of pastoral care and counseling, because you see it's so emotionally charged. The Psalms kind of give us a biblical precedent for being okay with saying, "I'm not okay." I'm not feeling okay. And so we see the writings of David and others who are profoundly in touch, in my estimation, with their emotional state as people of faith. Psalm 32 talks about, "Blessed is the man in whose spirit there is no deceit," and this kind of being able to be transparent with who I am and what I'm feeling. And he goes on to say, "When I kept silent," Dr. Shepherd, this moved me in Psalm 32. He said, "When I kept silent, I could feel it in my bones," this psychosomatic kind of thing. Psalm 42, he says, "My tears have been my meat and drink day and night. And why art thou cast down, O my soul?" And so you see him talking to himself, "But I will hope in God, and yet will I praise him." And Psalm 61, "When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock." And so we see these consistent expressions of someone who has, if you will, awareness of his emotional state, even as a person of faith. And so today we want to talk about emotional intelligence, and Dr. Shepherd is going to give us a little insight on what emotional intelligence is, and how it can be helpful to us in these emotionally charged times. Dr. Shepherd, help us out. What is emotional intelligence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Bishop, for that segue. I must comment just real quickly as you're talking about the repairs that are going on inside your house. And I don't want to lose that point, because really this is a time for us to look internally to see what repairs we need to do inside of our own building, our own physical body, and our own spiritual selves. And so I don't want to lose that point. You really hit that during this pandemic as we're shut in. Don't forget, to check in even on your own self. And thank God that he's allowed for that time. And I'm thankful for the repairs that are going on, even inside of me.
Yeah.
So with that said, emotional intelligence. So this is something that, a lot of people believe that they have, but find themselves falling short of. So emotional intelligence, it accounts for the importance of emotion in social interaction. I'm going to say that again. It accounts for the importance of emotion in social interaction, and is the ability of an individual to learn to respond in an emotionally healthy way. All right. So I wish somebody could kind of summarize that in your comment section to make sure that that you got that. So emotional intelligence, it accounts for the importance of emotion in social interaction. And let me tell you right now, that is so important. As we have been so quote unquote socially distancing, you have seen a rise in emotions. I've talked about it several times on this show, where increased irritability when people are driving their cars, the increased sensitivity and the anger, and even anxiety that people have as they go out into the stores and different places of where to purchase things, the markets, restaurants. God forbid you sneeze and you see people almost run for cover. And then even people get angry at you when they tell you that you got to wear a mask. It is unbelievable. I was in a place of business this past week, and they asked this person to put the mask on, and the man got angry. Literally, I thought there was about to be a fight. I saw with my own eyes, emotionally charged. So emotional intelligence is how we account for our emotion in social interaction and the ability of an individual to learn to respond in an emotional, healthy way. All right. So I asked the question, how high is your emotional intelligence, your EQ? Because this is what we're embarking on and what is being tested right now. Many people desire a high IQ. All right. Again, that's your intellect. All right. We want to have a lot of intellect. We want our children to be smart. We want to be smart. But in doing so, have you traded in a high EQ? Some people, and again, I'm going to give some examples, and because this is Spirit and Mind, I'm going to give some religious and non-religious examples. So some people, some saints in the church want to be powerful in the word, but treat others like second-class citizens. That is wrong. A person who's knowledgeable in academics, business, but is mean, non-caring, disrespectful, vengeful, that is not an emotionally stable person. All right. We're talking about EQ here. High IQ, but low EQ. It is the ability to perceive accurately, appraise, and express emotion. That's what emotional intelligence. I'm going to give this example. All right. And then we're going to move this train along. But as a physician, I am a physician. And one who has a thriving practice typically has a high IQ and a high EQ. High IQ, the ability to diagnose and coordinate a treatment plan, but a high EQ is the ability to communicate the findings and share empathetically in the meaning of the results and effects of the treatment. All right. Hopefully you got that. So when you survey and ask customers or consumers the characteristics of a good doctor, overwhelmingly people will say a doctor who will listen to his or her concerns and is thoughtful in his or her response. Yeah. So if you want to know the difference between a good doctor and an average doctor, all doctors should be smart. They have IQs, but what separates, as they say, the wheat from the tare is their ability to have EQ and their ability to be able to explain empathetically. That means with some emotion. That means with some caring, with some respect on what is happening to that person. In the early 2000s, in the world of medicine, they implemented this exam called a clinical skills exam to highlight the importance of emotional intelligence alongside clinical knowledge. And so the people who implemented the exam, They understood that an emotional understanding of the clinical situation may be needed to have an appropriate response. So what am I saying there? Is that it's not good enough to have the knowledge. It's not good enough for us to study about the coronavirus and to know all the stats of how many people are hospitalized in the ICU, the positivity rate, the number of people who have died from it. That's good. That's all knowledge. And that's what you hear from the news. But one of the things that is missing, which we have to do even through this program, and that we want to point out, is you got to have a sensitivity. You got to have an EQ. You got to know what your emotional intelligence is around all the situations so that you can properly express those emotions. And that's what's happening in our society. We know the knowledge, but we're not properly expressing what is happening, what's going on around us.
Wow. This is so important. And thank you. We're trying to get some of those things in the chat line, and just for your own and for our own ability to operate as better people, and that, and even in better social context. That's major because Dr. Shepherd, we live in a culture that is sometimes charged or accused or alleged to be overly emphatic on individualism and relative truth. And so you hear a lot about my truth and this is good for me. And Rita Twenge, the conservative psychologist, says that we have a narcissism epidemic. And so, but what I hear you saying is that one of the reasons why self-awareness is so important is because healthy self-awareness creates healthy social relationships. Yeah, I hear you talking like interpersonal relations being important.
Absolutely. It is so important. If you go back and think about what I talked about a couple of weeks ago regarding the components of emotion, all right, there was 3 components to emotion. And I'm going back to look at a couple of notes that I wrote because I don't want to forget anything that was so important. So there was thought that was part of emotion. There was appraisal and there was belief. All right. And so those are the 3 components of emotion. Thought, which many of us, none of us can really control. You know, again, as Christian believers, we ask God to come in and to help purify our thoughts. And we have to make sure we're thinking on those things which are just a good report to help our thought processes. But we have to remember appraisal and belief is also part of that. And so when we start appraising things wrong, when we start believing things that are not really the way in which they are seen, or we've been taught things that really are not right, it will affect. Let me give you some examples. Are inappropriate emotions present in situations? What do you mean by inappropriate emotions? Is someone joyful over someone else's misfortune? Yeah, and that happens. We have seen where people have been joyful over what is considered the misfortune of someone else, the downfall of someone else. Even if I don't agree with you, I should not still be joyful because you fall or because you fell or because you have fallen. Let me make sure I get my verb conjugation right there. No, that's off. And we need to be careful that even if somebody is caught, and the word talks about this, we have to be careful. Take heed lest you yourself fall. So even if I know that my brother or sister is wrong, even if I know that my brother or sister is off, then that I should not be joyful over that. And that's what's happening. If I relate it back to the whole mask situation, people are looking at them like, what's wrong with them? They don't understand. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I wish I could see some of y'all because y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. We get mad over things like that. And I understand, and for some reason, but let me tell you, we should not just be getting mad over whether or not somebody's wearing a mask or not. We need to be getting angry at the institutions that are not teaching us properly. We should be getting mad at the institutions that have failed us when it comes to testing for the coronavirus. There is no way if we tout ourselves to be the number one healthcare or provider of healthcare in the world, or we have the number one experts, but yet we can't facilitate testing. Arizona, if there's anybody out there from Arizona, my heart goes out to you all. They have a positivity rate. I just saw this in the news last night, 27%. That is ridiculous. 27% positivity rate of the coronavirus. And so what are we doing about helping that situation, as opposed to getting mad over, well, this person's not wearing their mask, this person's not wearing it. Yes, we want you to wear your mask, but let's make sure that we properly channel our energy and our EQ to where it needs to be placed. I hope this is making sense.
It really is, Dr. Shepherd, and it's provoking this question from me, and I'm so glad you were led to go this way, because that was going to be my question to you, was how do you think that emotional intelligence and emotional regulation can be relevant and applicable as it concerns a couple of areas. We'll get to some others, but the first one was as it relates to this pandemic. And I asked that because of this. There seems to be a distinction between how we feel in this culture about the pandemic, which is tired of it, over it, want to live, got my freedoms, feel like being free. And so there's this distinction between our emotional reaction to this pandemic, because it's been 4.5 months, maybe 5, March, April, May, June, July. But it feels like forever.
Right.
And so there's these feelings of frustration. There's these feelings of fatigue. There's these feelings of, okay, I'm used to it now. It's just a part of our lives. So let's go ahead and do what we're going to do. And that's the emotional side that there seems to be. But then there is the side of the reports that 36 states are reporting an increase in infection, and some think we're on the road to relapse. And so there's what the science is saying, and then there's how we're feeling. And so how might do you think we're being more guided by our emotions, whether they be emotions in politics, emotions in institutions, or are we being guided by our, by more rational sides of our emotional intelligence?
Well, Bishop, I think it depends on who you ask. Now, most people out there go say we're guided by our emotions. I mean, we are emotionally charged people. Even though people don't want to admit that, but that is such truth right there. And we have to admit that that's okay, because emotion is what God gave us. If you don't have emotion, then most times we will not even get up and be able to be committed to certain things. But if you are running a particular commitment or running off of just emotion for a particular commitment, then most commitments would end. Let's think about the sanctity of marriage. Let's think about the sanctity of your job or your profession. There are days when you don't feel like, and your emotions tell you to go do something else. And if you listen to your emotions, then you will have ended, most of us, a marriage. You would have ended a job. Some of us have even ended our lives. And so that we even have to be serious and take that into account, because of how we were feeling at that particular time and a day. We would have ended literally our destiny. And so I do believe that we right now in this country, if I had to take a poll, we are running more off of emotion versus the scientific facts that are guiding us through this pandemic. And when, Bishop, I'm looking to the segue into this particular article that I shared with you over this past week. And as I was reading and studying it, religion as itself can really. Hold on one second. Siri's trying to talk to me. Thank you, Siri. I need an amen, Siri.
She will do that.
we're looking at how religion can be on both sides, on both ends. When we look at religion, it can be part of the problem and it can be part of the solution. You might say, well, Dr. Shepherd, how could it be part of the problem? Well, let's look at some of these things that have been said that have been based off of emotion, based off of what people are feeling. We've had certain televangelists, certain mega preachers say that this whole virus is a hoax and that God's wind is just going to blow it away. Yeah, okay. If God's wind, I'm still waiting. All right. I'll just say that. I'm still waiting on God's wind to come on through. He's capable. But as you see, this thing is here, and it's here for until God says it is going to be up. And he hasn't said that yet. And so we need to make sure that we educate our congregants about things like this. You opening up our church doors with no type of precautions, with no type of guidelines, just letting us go forward and doing whatever we want to do. That's when religion becomes a problem. You're sitting there fighting about your freedom of religion, and you're not caring about the health of people. That's where the emotion really needs to step in. And that's where I said earlier, I need to check the EQ of some of these leaders, because they're sitting here fighting about their right to freedom of being able to assemble themselves, but yet they're not caring about the people whose lives they're putting in jeopardy when they come together and don't abide by those rules. There is something wrong there. And you'll never get me to agree with somebody on that, because there's something off there. The word states specifically that we are to care for others as we would care for ourselves. We're to love one another. So something is off there. If you don't understand how you are putting someone else's lives at jeopardy with your decision making when it comes to religious gatherings. But then religious gatherings can be a part of the solution, because if you're abiding by those rules and you're abiding by the local public health guidelines, then you should be implementing those things that allow for people to get the relief. We know that religious services provide the relief from anxiety. They provide the education. They provide the spiritual connection that people are so desperately in need of during this time. So we have to make sure that we balance out the two. But and those who know me, I'm bold. I would even attest that you need to check the EQ of your spiritual leader right through here. Because that is important, and you can test it by knowing whether or not are they caring for their saints or the congregants that they have shepherd over or have leadership over during this time.
Absolutely. You raised some powerful points as always, Dr. Shepherd. And it reminded me, of course, and I'll bring everyone up because our viewers are part of Spirit and Mind too. We've been dialoguing and sharing and looking at some scholarly research as it concerns this mindset of emotional intelligence, emotional regulation. And in these are very emotionally charged times. Carla McCoy writes, and it's so true, that this pandemic has caused us to become so uncomfortable that our emotions are heightened. And making this distinction and testing, I think this is a time to test the EQ of leadership, inclusive of spiritual, absolutely, inclusive of political leaders, inclusive of industry leaders, absolutely, inclusive of administrations, and what is the emotional quotient of persons who are deciding whether schools open or whether we come back to work, CEOs, all who are making these powerful decisions that are emotionally charged. We were one of the sources we were referencing. We just kind of like to nerd out on this stuff a little bit in between Spirit and Mind broadcasts, but Tess Wilkinson Ryan, who's a professor of law and psychology at Penn State, has a fascinating article. And here's the headline: "Our minds aren't equipped for this kind of reopening." That's the title of it. our minds are not equipped for this kind of reopening. And the thesis is that this is creating a psychological swamp and confusion for us. And it's fascinating. Dr. Wilkinson Ryan talks about the fact that pandemic decision making involves at least two complex cognitive tasks, which results show that we have challenges with en masse in a broad generalization. One is moral reasoning. Mm-hmm. Is it right to reopen, in other words? Mm-hmm. What are the moral responsibilities we have, not just to ourselves, but to others who are being affected and impacted? And then secondly, risk evaluation. We're not good at making some of those risk assessments according to what she cites, really a century of research, that we go for what is the easiest and most really immediately gratifying decision. And so this idea of knowing where we are emotionally and then being able to even balance it with, if you will, I don't want to put these at ends, but being able to rationalize how we feel with some more rational understandings and having this dialogue and coming to decisions that way. So that's so very important. And so I said that to say that ultimately, Dr. Wilkinson Ryan says that we really have to hold institutions, governmental and faith institutions and corporate institutions accountable, which is the essence of prophetic ministry. Just blending a little theology into this discussion. I know that we speak of the prophetic ministry oftentimes as foretelling, and that is a component of prophetic ministry, but it also involves forthtelling, which is discerning the times and holding leadership accountable because it's a mutual accountability here that's going on. And so this is the time to ask, what are the decisions behind? It's not just a political thing, and it's not just Christian. Let's be clear. What I loved about the research article, one of them, and I'm kind of got all of them in my head, but one of the ones we discussed, Dr. Shepherd pointed out that it's not just even a Christian thing, but even in the Jewish community and even in the Muslim community, with leadership trying to balance almost, which is a continuum from saying this thing is an absolute hoax and it's non-existent, which is the epitome of perhaps malignant denial, to this idea of absolute fear-mongering. And somewhere in there, we have to find balance between these polarities, is what I thought was fascinating. So how might we do that, Dr. Shepherd? You're a man of faith and a man of science, and they coexist in you in a wonderful way, I think. So how might we balance those extremes?
Absolutely. And it is a balancing act. You have to make sure that you are feeding yourself the right thing. Just when you are, just as you take in certain things for your natural body, even though it might be good just to keep drinking water. If you drink too much water, it's called polydipsia. And then you actually end up saturating the salt that is in your body. And so you might say, well, I'm supposed to be drinking water, excessive water. But if you just drink too much water, you actually could end up dying. So there has to be a balance. You got to be able to drink the necessary amount of water. You got to eat the necessary amount of vegetables, the amount of protein, and the different fruits that help make up a good natural physical body. It's the same thing for the spiritual. We have to make sure that we're feeding our spiritual bodies, feeding our minds. And that's what I really love about this time that God has afforded unto me and to you too, to be able to balance that out. Again, there should be a craving to want to read more, read your Bible, read those literary works that stimulate your mind, that have a spiritual influence or a spiritual slant to it. I'll just use that word. But then also you read those things that are going to educate your mind, whatever those things that you are passionate about, whatever those gifts and things and callings that you've been called to do. This is your time to be studying that. This is how you're able to help balance and to be able to help figure out who you should be listening to during that time. Yes, because I'm telling you, as I continue to do my research and study, it has helped draw some lines of demarcation, even within my relationship with friends, even my relationship with professionals, and say, you know what? Thank God for you, but right now, this is not healthy for me. And so you need to make sure that during that time and I spoke about this, Bishop, and I normally don't go here too much. I let you deal with that whole theological side of stuff, but I need to say this because there was even an awakening within me yesterday. Many of you all know that I also do a show with my organization, and I really just stick to mental health disorders. And one of my associates was listening to that and was commenting, and he asked if we could talk after the show, and he prayed for me. And one of the things that I asked for before he prayed was, I'm in a spirit of, I'm in a place, a season of transition. I know that. And so many of us find ourselves right there. We're either going into something, we're in the middle of it, or we're coming out of it. And so, you're always in the middle of transition. I can feel that more so than ever. And so I asked for that prayer of transition as God is doing that for me. Why is this important? Because as I am in that season of transition, your ears need to be attuned to where you are at. Your senses should be sharpened. This is not a time. I hope you all hear me on this. This is not a time for your senses to be dulled. And your sense of smell, your sense of touch, your sense of hearing, and your visual. This is the time for it to be heightened. Even your sense of taste. Those are the five senses. Those things should be sharpened so you can know where you're going to go and help guide, allow God to help guide you to that place. So those are some of the things that I think that we need to keep ourselves so that we are naturally balanced. All right. I just told you some of the things you need to do, eating those different things. Sleep needs to be included in that. Taking some time out for yourself. Exercise, relaxation, all of that for your natural body. But our spiritual body, again, should be built up during this time, doing those various methods that I talked about earlier. And so let me just say this, just before I end. You talked about moral development. And I'm just going back to that real quick, because you can really test somebody. And I know the Bible tells us that, you can try fire or you can try the spirit by the spirit. And so that's why you want to make sure that you have a spirit of discernment. All right. I'm not saying you go around judging people, but you gotta try things by the Spirit. Every person out there on Facebook, on social media, saying that they are under the name or banner of Jesus Christ or under whatever thus said banner, I hate to tell you, but they're not espousing information that is accurate, and you have to try the Spirit by the Spirit, and there's nothing wrong with that. Your senses should be so heightened right now that you say, that don't sound right. And you got to know the word. So that's why your IQ is important. So you got to know, you got to be knowledgeable. So when somebody said, wait a minute, even myself, and if you see, as I correct myself, when I hear myself say something, I was like, wait a minute, no, that's not correct, Jonathan. Let me go back and say it correctly, because that's how attuned that we should be. And you need to check people's emotions. If people are you hanging around with laughing about folks who are going through right now, and or not building you up, girl, we might as well just go ahead and quit. Wait a minute, no, that's not the person you need to be around right now. We need to find ourselves of how we're going to do better. I know we're down right now, but how are we going to come on out and do this better? All right, that little preacher be.
No, it's good. It's all good. Let me tell you why it's been good to me. Because what I hear you talking about is this idea of emotional intelligence and and self-awareness, to know where our emotions are, to be able. I got a couple of things. One, and what you're talking about, and checking yourself in this time. This ability to engage in self-talk that is healthy. First of all, we see it in the psalm. I think I just quoted the song. We said, "Why art thou cast down, O my soul?" This is how we feel, but this is what we're going to do.
Right.
And that ability to acknowledge feelings, but also understand that every feeling does not have to be factual, in terms of that this is how I feel, and I'm acknowledging that because I need to be open and transparent with myself. Because there's another psalmist, as in 32, he says, "You desire truth in the inward parts." So I have to be honest with myself, and that's what prayer and this devotional time and quiet time. We spend so much time trying to run away from stuff. You used a powerful analogy at the beginning from my disclaimer, Dr. Shepherd, that I was so very busy, and those busy things always gave me reasons to go out of the house and not realize what needed to be fixed in the house, or to diminish the necessity of fixing them. And so, but when God, one of the most powerful scriptures, all of them are powerful, but pertinent to this conversation, I'm reminded of Genesis when it says, "And Jacob was left alone, and there he wrestled with an angel." When God gets us in solitude, it's our nature to kind of want to find something else to do to avoid that introspection. But maybe we have to consider that God has us in this moment for an introspective moment,
yes,
to work on some things internally, because if we strengthen our infrastructure, our relationships will be healthier. So that's just so powerful to me, the ability to engage in this self-talk. It's bringing out the theology in me. I'm also reminded of the woman with the issue of blood who was surrounded by, it says the press was great, which meant there was a lot of pressure going on externally. But the most powerful thing in that verse for me right now, but she said to herself, if I can do this, if I can just touch him, if I can make a connection, if I can disconnect from all of this external pressure and make this personal connection with my Savior, then I shall be made whole. But she had to talk to herself. And so I just want to submit that this self-talk season can be helpful. It can build us up. And if we don't run from it, but if we allow the Lord to show us some things that need to be done internally, and maybe that's a reason. It's not the first time in the scriptures that there's scriptural precedent for God making the temple inaccessible, for making the temple unavailable. It happened when they were in Babylon. It happened when the temple was destroyed again in 70 AD by the Romans. So it's not the first time in the history of Christianity that God has made the temple inaccessible. When the temple was inaccessible, the prophets rose up. And the prophets began to discern the culture and the times and to speak truth to power. And so it seems to me that that's the season we're living in right now. A community is still important. In fact, that article said one of the ways that the church can help, I was moved by that, is to be to empower resilience, to empower hope, and to look out for each other. And the most harmful things that we can do is to be self-absorbed. There's a difference between being introspective and being self-absorbed. Wow. And so and so they are just powerful things that provide an opportunity. But Dr. Shepherd, here's my question for you. One of many that have come into my mind. But when we talk about emotional intelligence, You talk a little bit. I want to address this matter that sometimes emotions are so strong, even if they aren't right. They're so strong because they're tied, and you and I were talking earlier, they're tied to our beliefs. Can you talk a little bit? I think that one of the things that makes them strong is that the emotions um, correlate with somatic things, adrenaline rushes, and uh, are there biochemical things that happen that make the emotion seem even more real even if they aren't right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, Bishop. Wow. I gotta go back. So I'm gonna answer your question for that, but I'm gonna go back to something you said earlier. So
Yeah.
this has just been powerful today. It really has been helping me. And even in this, I hope people understand that this show is more than just us dialoguing here. We are providing this self-care that many people are looking for. And I say self-care because you should be able to take this knowledge and be able to feed yourself, your natural and your spiritual self, so that you're taking care of yourself. So that's what I mean by self-care. So yes, Bishop, there are some physiological things that occur definitely with emotions. And so there's increased heart rate, increase breathing, that occur when people get excited, emote. You notice it even when you go into houses of worship. You can tell when somebody is having a good day versus a bad day in the house of worship. You can almost tell with certain people. And again, I'm not bashing. I'm just saying you could just be the observer of people. You don't have to be a psychiatrist. You could just look at this, say, "Oh, okay, so and so she feeling it today." You really see it in the choir. When the choir is really going forth, you can just tell. Okay, oh yeah, they on it today. And of course, Bishop, being a man who studied music, but then you look at them. Some days they walk out, you're like, "Oh God, I don't know what we gonna get today," because and a lot of it just has to do with emotion. A lot of it has to do with what just happened even prior to. That's why it's so important that before you go to do any type of test or performance, or before you do something that is really major, that's why people will take advantage, I'll use that word, of your impulse buying, because it's all emotion. That's what gambling's all about. That's what even certain car dealerships and other people, they take advantage. They have a lot of bells and whistles. They get you all revved up. They use your eyes, your ears. You got these lights and stuff and glitz and glamour and wow. And it causes you to go ahead and not to think, wait a minute, I really don't have that money to buy what I'm about to buy or spend, because your emotion has gotten the best of you. All right. And so, yeah. And when I say by emotion, because there's a lot of impulse buying or emotional buying, or that's the terms that we'll use. And I'll just keep it simple like that. But what happens in the brain, there's a neurotransmitter called dopamine. All right. And again, that's probably about the most scientific you want to hear me get today. Dopamine, it's in your brain. Just know it's in there. And when your eye gate and your ear gate and all those different things take those things to your brain, all right, and send signals to your brain, it releases that dopamine to say, this is the feel-good neurotransmitter. And it's going to make me feel good. It's going to make me feel good right here and now in the present, not even thinking about what the consequences may be later on. And so that's what we have to be cognizant of. And that's what's happened even in this pandemic. Let me relate it to you all out there. We were shut down. We were sheltered in place for part of March and April. And then Memorial Day came and they eased some of the restrictions. And then we saw what happened. People started to say, oh my God, I can go outside. I'm no longer, you can't hold me down. Not even thinking about what the scientific officials have said about making sure you wear a mask, staying 6 feet apart, washing your hands every time you touch something. We forgot about that. I can even attest to, even in my practice, I had a no-show rate for several weeks in a row. The last 2-3 weeks, I'm starting to have no-shows. People out at house parties, of various other venues. I won't tell off on too much now. But people are not where they're supposed to be at. And like, oh, Dr. Shepherd, I just have to catch you the next go around. What? That's, come on now. That what they're showing to me, and again, and I'm careful not to just blame the people all the way around. But what's happened is I understand their thinking. They've been shut down for so long, and you tell them now they can finally go out. It's like, they go from 0 to 100. And so now they find themselves doing things that many of them now have regretted. I heard a story recently about a young lady who she was destined to have a birthday party. She was just going to have one. She was going to live it up. She even got a party bus. And shame on those people who even allowed that to happen, to rent a party bus. But the end of the story is that the young lady got COVID-19 and is in ICU right now. Again, she wanted to live. She wanted to make sure she celebrated her birthday. I'm telling her now, again, I don't know her personally, but if I could, I would say, we got to think about this so you can live to see your next birthday, because that is the reality that we're, where we're at. And so, all those different things can flood your mind. And so, again, that's why we had to have people around us. I talked about this earlier, who can help put the brakes, help us to challenge us to say, hey, that's not a good decision. And we need to be listening to those people. And we also need to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for failure, so that our emotions don't get the best of us.
Wow. This is so very important. So this self-awareness is major, and some of this we'll have to get to. And we raise this because, and this is powerful in itself, because I sometimes feel that because it's human. There's even as we were preparing for this podcast, you're looking at the data, you're looking at the research. And it's like, are we still talking about this pandemic? And, that's my transparency of my emotional process going, we still talking about this? Because it feels like it's been forever.
Right.
Because it's so very different. And yet the reality, the rational reality, is that it is still very real. Mm-hmm. And so I have to have those dialogues within myself, and so because it's a very human thing, and Jesus talks about the hearts of men failing them because of fear, and so we're trying to find this balance between being absolutely fearful that scholarly research is showing, and the extreme of totally. Like, again, I call it malignant denial. It's acting like it's not there to the point that it becomes dangerously life-threatening, right. Taking crazy risk. And so we haven't gotten to, and perhaps because we're in our last 5 minutes, so Dr. Shepherd, we didn't even get to discussing emotional intelligence, not only amid the pandemic of COVID-19, but we haven't talked about, and perhaps that's where we'll pick up next week, and we'll probably carry us emotional intelligence as it concerns our ongoing issues with systemic racism, with some people, again, on the same continuum. We understand on one end that everything is not race, perhaps, if you want to go with that end of the continuum. Some people are there. Then other people want to go to the extreme that it just does not exist, mm-hmm. And that there's no such thing. And even in church community, so we'll pick that up. But that's in another emotionally charged subject, because there's strong feelings about it. But then there's actually been considerable research on the psychology of racism and the sociology of racism. And the research just is what it is. And so we need to talk about that next week as well. Maybe we could give a tease because I know you had some of those issues that charged you this week. You want to give a little bit of a headline?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. We're gonna have to talk about this. So again, we're around the same wavelength because I was like, Bishop, we haven't even touched the subject of racism. So we have to touch this issue of having two justice systems within our country, two criminal justice systems within our country. It is abominable to have a Roger Stone who is now freed by the president's pardon, and yet the murderers of Breonna Taylor are still free. That makes no sense whatsoever. And so, again, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about in the workplace the EQ of your supervisors, of the people who are your peers, your colleagues. I'm dealing with that even within the American Psychiatric Association right now, which I'm a proud member of. But let me tell you, there's some straight up institutionalized and systemic racism even within that organization that has to be dismantled. I'm even looking at an article right now. The headlines, it says Black psychiatrists call on white colleagues to dismantle racism in profession and APA. There are so many different examples I can give to you of within the area of medicine of where we've got to attack this. And one of the ways in which we do is understanding the EQ of the people who you work along with, your supervisors, and even within the institutions that you work for. There was a statement that was made in the article, and then I'm going to end with this, Bishop. It talks about how humans struggle to estimate the correct answer to a problem without drifting toward the answer that best serves their own interests.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say that again. Humans struggle to estimate the correct answer to a problem without drifting toward the answer that best serves their own interests. And that's what we're talking about here today. We have got to make sure that even if it is a tough conversation, and we got to have these tough conversations if things are going to be dismantled, no longer will Jonathan Shepard stand by and allow people to get away with things without having that tough or uncomfortable conversation. It may make me feel uncomfortable, but one of the things I understand that even when I'm uncomfortable, it takes me out of that season of transition that I'm in to another level so that I can continue to progress and move forward. And if we're going to have some real dialogue and see the end to systemic institutional racism and be able to heal from the historical trauma that we have been facing as Black people, we've got to be able to do that. So stop seeking our own interests and let's look to get collective healing that we know is necessary.
Amen. We'll pick up there next week. So please tell somebody about next week. And again, I hope you understand the context that it's not bashing. My background in training deals a lot with marriage and family therapy. And one of the things that we talk about in healthy marriages is the necessity of being able to have fair confrontations. Or actually, we call it fighting fair, is the colloquial expression. What it means is that if a relationship is going to be healthy, actually silence and avoidance is not a sign of health. Some people brag about that and say, we never disagree. We never argue. Well, the marriage and family therapist side of me would beg to differ. What it means is that you repress a lot of emotions,
right,
and you avoid a lot of stuff. Because the idea of a healthy relationship is not avoidance, but it is healthy confrontation. And that's why emotional regulation is so important. And that's what Dr. Shepard's alluding to. If we're going to heal this racial divide that is now as old as this country, it keeps coming up. Because if you know the history, every time it's time to make a significant advance in healing the relationship, a party reneges and regresses. And so that's why it's still an issue. So we're going to be talking with that and talking about those different justice systems and how they show, and the president's commuting the sentence of someone and all of that kind of thing. So join us next week for Spirit and Mind. We want to see you. And in the meantime, stay connected What's your information one more time, Dr. Shepherd?
Yes, please stay connected to me. You can look on right here on the screen, spelling of my name, Dr. Jonathan Shepherd. You go to my Facebook page, like it, and you'll continue. Hit the turn on notifications. So every time I'm going live, you'll know when we're going live. You'll get some powerful information. I'm doing my best. Keep me in prayer. You can look at me at Dr. J. Shep on Twitter and for Instagram. So those are the best ways to find me. In case you're looking for direct care services, let me say this. I don't normally say this too often. I am located in Woodlawn, Maryland, Hope Health Systems. Check us out, Hope Health Systems. You can go to our website. And if you're looking for any direct care services because you know, or you or somebody in your family or someone you know is in need of direct care services for psychiatric or mental health services, please look us up. We'll do you some good. All right.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone. Would be remiss if I did not say thank you to everyone in our that has participated in this discussion. Angela Pinckney, Anthony Rhodes, Jackie Mitchell, Cynthia Hackshaw, and so many others who have been so instrumental in the continuing dialogue, and your responses help to feed our, again, iron sharpens iron, and it drives this dialogue. That's why we want you to stay connected. Reach out to Dr. Shepherd, give him some of your feedback. Even if there's areas of interest you'd like for us to discuss, please let him know. Reach out to me at CGR Ministries on social media. On Facebook it's CGR or at Bishop G. Robinson on Instagram. Let me know what you think. Reach out to us. And if all that fails, you want to welcome you can join me at the Tabernacle of the Lord. I'm blessed to pastor right in Southwest Baltimore. You can meet us in worship online tomorrow at 10 a.m. At the totlc.org or on YouTube. Actually, and if you want to catch up on Spirit in Mind episodes, go to CGR Ministries on YouTube. You can pull up everything and then let us know what you think. So we look forward to you joining us next week on Spirit in Mind. God bless you.